Alrighty, yo, what is going on, everybody? It's your boy, Mr. DDG94, back with another reaction video. Today we finna react to Crocker's backstory is darker than I remember. Oh man, when they did Crocker's backstory for Fairly Odd Parents, when they did his backstory, I was like, damn, this shit kind of sad. But anywho, without further ado, let's get right into it.
Can you believe it's been 22 years since Nickelodeon trauma dumped Crocker's backstory on all of us? The secret origin of Denzel Crocker aired in the third season of Fairly Odd Parents all the way back in June 2003, 2 months before MySpace was first launched. My God. And I remember this was a shocking episode to me as a kid. Crocker had always been a jerk of a teacher who was weirdly obsessed with fairies. And I, like most kids, assumed it was because he was just a creepy old man loser meanie pants. But as many stories have taught us, nobody is born wicked. They become wicked. And this episode's purpose is to show us all the depressing truth behind why Crocker turned into such a wanker. And the reason is pretty hard to forget. So since this episode is older than MySpace, and we probably forget a few of the tragic details, I think it's definitely time for a rewatch to see how Crocker turned into one of the most hated characters of cartoon history. Alright, let's dive in. Chester and AJ are vibing when Timmy shows up and screams that it's March 15th and everyone needs to hide. And that's giving me some Julius Caesar vibes right there. Beware of the Ides of March. I wonder if they picked March 15th for this specific reason. Once everyone realizes it's March 15th, they all act as if the enemy country is invading and desperately run for cover. Cosmo and Wanda ask Timmy what's so special about March 15th, and he explains it's when Crocker is at his meanest. Hold on a second. I'm supposed to believe a bunch of 10-year-olds notice this trend that Crocker acts extra mean on a specific random date in March every year? The prepubescent children noticed this and kept an accurate record of the date when it occurs? Bull. I can accept magic and fairies, but this is a stretch. Seriously, ask any 10-year-old when their parents' birthdays are. They won't know. They don't keep track of dates. Also,
Unless you got parents that try to remind you all the fucking time.
At his meanest. Crocker is already terrible. How could he get any worse? Is he gonna murder them? AJ uses a DNA tracker to track Crocker and says he's getting closer. Crocker then rolls up in his pedo van that is later seen in Abercatastrophe just one episode later, and all of the kids run into school as if it'll be a safe place to go. Literally, Crocker is the teacher. He's finna follow y'all in there. Class starts and Crocker immediately begins abusing his students. He uses a giant ass magnet to force Chester's teeth straight through his desk. He then asks AJ a question that he can't answer, which causes him to resort to the fetal position. Crocker then sets his sights on Timmy, and he decides to force Timmy to wear a dunce hat while letting rabbit dogs chomp at him. And honestly, Timmy wishing for rabbit dingoes to reign upon Dimsdale and Timmy's secret wish makes a little more sense now. Timmy asks Crocker why he's like this, and Crocker crashes out. AJ interrupts his rant, and Crocker punishes him by asking, "Quick, what's the sound of one hand clapping?" Which AJ can't answer. And guys, this I don't like one bit. I think half his brain just imploded. Nope. Done with that. Crocker screams, "Why do none of the things I wish for ever become reality?" as he slams the door, leaving a bunch of 10-year-olds unattended. Wanda asks Timmy what happened to Crocker to make him hate March 15th, and Timmy says he's gonna find out. But hang on, the rabbit dogs are still there, and Timmy needs a plan to get past them. So what does he do? He pawns off his own fairies and tells the dogs to go get them instead so he gets a chance to escape. Bro could have just wished up some way to get rid of the dogs, to be honest. That was just rude. Timmy uses the DNA tracker to find Crocker's house, and to be honest, he lives in a straight bando. Bro's probably squatting in there or something. Teachers deserve a fair salary. Come on now. Cosmo and Wanda then poof in as trash cans to be with Timmy. So they could have just poofed Timmy to Crocker's house from the classroom. Why did they make him walk? Probably because he made the dogs attack them. Also, Timmy says the DNA DNA tracker says this is Crocker's house right here.
According to AJ's Crocker tracker, this is Crocker's house.
But the tracker doesn't say anything about Crocker's house. It's tracking Crocker's location, who is currently not even home. Is Timmy on shrooms, yo? Crocker rolls up and Timmy, Cosmo, and Wanda turn into hummingbirds to spy on him in the privacy of his own home. Crocker argues with his mom, who tries to give him a cake to make him feel better, and he responds by saying he can't remember the last time he's been happy, as he slams a childhood photo to the floor. He then slams the cake out of his mom's hands for good measure. My God. Timmy hears Crocker's mom saying he wasn't always like this, so he decides to go back in time and spy on Crocker's childhood trauma. And this low-key reminds me of the scene from Harry Potter where he spies on Snape's traumatic childhood memories. Instead of just wishing to be back in time, Timmy wishes for a time-traveling scooter instead. Okay. He then travels back 10 years and lands right in front of his home just as his parents are moving in. Mr. and Mrs. Turner yap about how excited they are to have a daughter, and Mr. Turner even goes as far as to say he'd be crushed if he had a son, while they open a truck full of clothing and toys for a girl. And this is awful. Timmy was doomed to be a disappointment to them before he was even out of the womb. I talk about this even more in my Timmy's Parents Are Psychotic video, but it's truly just insane how much Timmy's parents don't love him or even want him. Mr. Turner then throws the for sale sign to the house next door, and the Dinkelbergs move in instantly, beginning a lifelong rivalry. Crocker speeds by Timmy in his van, and damn, that thing lasts a while. That's a long-running van. And he crashes his car while tweaking out about Fairly Godparents. He flies through the windshield, landing on his skull despite wearing his seatbelt. He also crashed in the Principal Waxelplax's car, and she says, "Don't call me Geraldine, I'm your boss now." Timmy is shocked that Crocker is still miserable even 10 years ago, so they go 10 years farther back to the 80s. And it's funny because nowadays, if you wished yourself back 10 years and then another 10 years, you would only end up back in 2005. I'm dying. I must be dying. And I gotta give credit where credit is due.
That was a good year.
80s outfit
2005 was a great year.
80s Crocker tells Geraldine, who is Principal Waxelplax, that he's got big news to announce today, and she's excited to hear it. Mr. Turner, who's now a janitor, sees the big news sign and assumes that big news means big messes will be there as well, and he runs in. He sees Mrs. Turner and is instantly in love, but notices she's there on a date with Dinkelberg. And this is some deep lore, man. Having him as a neighbor must be awkward as hell. Crocker takes to the stand to announce his big news, which is simply that Fairly Godparents exist. He asks for government funding to help prove their existence and shows off a few close-ups of Cosmo and Wanda as proof, but no one is buying it. Which is funny because these are real pictures. How did he even get these? This takes place in the 80s, and I'm pretty sure Photoshop wasn't really a thing yet. Would Crocker have even been able to fake these photos?
No.
Crocker ends his presentation by suggesting they put painful tracking collars on every child in America to track down these fairies, to which everyone laughs at him relentlessly as Geraldine cries out that she's in love with a psychotic moron. The government then denies Crocker's request and decides to use their $150,000 in funding instead on Dinkelberg's parachute pants. Excuse me? And as soon as he gets the money, he instantly breaks up with Mrs. Turner. Mr. Turner swoops in within a second to dry up her tears with a mop, and he was always a second choice. This is not romantic at all. Crocker, still getting berated by the crowd, screams it's the second worst day of his life. Upon hearing this, Timmy exclaims they have to go back even further, all the way back to Crocker's childhood. Timmy and his fairies then travel to Dimsdale, March 14th, 1972, and to blend in, Cosmo and Wanda add a smiley face to his shirt. And honestly, it made me giggle a little bit how low effort this outfit was compared to the 80s outfit. Also, did the sky really look like this in the 70s? If so, someone take me to the 70s, man. Timmy pulls out the DNA tracker to find Crocker, but Cosmo says he knows where he is and poofs them all to school. Cosmo being the only one with logic
School,
here,
man.
of course Crocker's in school. He's supposed to be 10 years old. Timmy finds Crocker chilling on the playground, and Wanda says he looks so familiar, but she can't put her wand on it. Timmy then points out his mom, who's wearing goddamn lipstick at 10 years old, and Dinkelberg is pushing her on the swing. So their relationship goes really far back, which makes him breaking up with her 10 years later as soon as he gets rich wild. Timmy's dad then skateboards by, eyeing up Dinkelberg.
Dinkelberg.
And damn, it's really been a lifelong feud, and he doesn't see he's about to get ran over by a truck. Crocker then rolls up in a soapbox car and saves Timmy's dad, impressing Principal Waxelplax in the process. And I gotta say, I think it's really dope that they told the story of their relationship in reverse order. First, we see Waxelplax tell Crocker to stop calling her by her first name and that she's his boss now. Then we see Waxelplax break down because the man she loves is insane. And then we get to see her falling in love with him for the first time. Pretty interesting stuff for Fairly Odd Parents, I gotta be honest. Yvette You Betcha runs a news report on Crocker saving Timmy's dad's life, and she says it's not even the first time he saved someone, and the mayor declares March 15th National Denzel Crocker Day. He runs off to tell his mom, and Timmy and his fairies give chase. Crocker tries to tell his mom the news, but she said she doesn't have time to listen to him as she rushes to her second job. He then realizes he's been left with Vic, the evil babysitter, and as soon as Timmy spies on child Crocker, he starts to piece it all together. Inattentive parents, evil babysitter, green and pink parrots? He must have fairy godparents. He screams and he convulses like Crocker himself. The parrots then poof into Cosmo and Wanda, and Timmy is beside himself. He demands an explanation from Cosmo and Wanda, but they can't remember anything. Wanda says all she remembers is that March 15th, 1972 is the worst day ever. And I'm not quite clear if she means just for Crocker or for all of mankind. Cosmo and Wanda assume that since they can't remember Crocker, that he must have gotten taken away from them. Except that's not how it fucking works. The next morning, Crocker asks his mom if she'll be at the big Denzel Crocker Day ceremony, but she has to clean out the lockers at the roller disco tonight, so unfortunately, no shot she's coming. He starts to cry a little as he walks to City Hall when he runs into Timmy. He tells Timmy he's going to City Hall, and Timmy and his fairies just follow him. It's as simple as that. There, the mayor crowns Crocker the most helpful, least selfish, grooviest, and most far-out kid in the city. Crocker starts to give his acceptance speech to his adoring fans, and goddamn, the entire town showed up for Crocker, bro. He has a Twilight-sized fan base. Wanda flies off to get some granola and leaves Cosmo unattended. Cosmo then flies on top of Crocker's head whilst he's giving his speech, and for no reason starts to expose himself to the public as a fairy. But before he can do it, Timmy dives on top of Crocker to try and prevent it, and Wanda kills the power to the microphones. Crocker asks Timmy how he keeps finding him and what he wants. Timmy explains that he has a DNA tracker and gives it to Crocker. He then tells Crocker he needs to go home because his secret is in grave danger. Future Cosmo then restores power to the microphones for some reason, and Timmy accidentally tells the entire crowd that Crocker has fairies. Nice one, Timmy. Right on cue, Jorgen descends down from a pink hurricane, and let me just say, he's looking groovy as hell. Timmy wishes to be hidden, and Crocker realizes that Timmy had his own fairies. Jorgen then tells Crocker that he revealed his secret and will now lose both his fairies and his memories. The entire crowd will have their memories wiped as well, and no magic in the universe can ever bring it back. This is so harsh for something that was clearly not Crocker's fault in any way. Before Jorgen wipes Crocker's memory, Cosmo takes the memory stick and wipes his and Wanda's memory just for funsies. While Jorgen is distracted, Crocker takes a strand of Cosmo's hair, puts it in the DNA tracker, and writes "Fairy Godparents Exist" as a note to himself on the back of the tracker. Jorgen finally uses the memory wiper on Crocker, erasing his memory, and the memory stick is so damaging to humans that Crocker's teeth basically get destroyed. His hairline implodes. He just instantly ages on the spot. The crowd tries to remember why they're all gathered, and they come to the conclusion that they must be an angry mob gathered to attack and kill Crocker. So I guess the memory stick also wiped their memories of Crocker saving random citizens' lives, even though that happened days, weeks, months ago? How much do these people forget? As the crowd chases Crocker away, Timmy wants a do-over and wishes to be back to March 14th again. But modern and 70s Jorgen both stop him in his tracks. They tell him that he can no longer travel to March of 1972. Why not? Is Jorgen really that satisfied with the outcome of ruining Crocker's life that he's determined to keep the timeline stuck this way? Also, Timmy could have just poofed to the end of February, wait for a few weeks to pass, then try his plan again, because he technically wouldn't be wishing himself to March of 1972. Timmy is sent back to present day, and the Jorgens have a disco break with themselves, which quite frankly, I love. Crocker finally ditches the angry mob when his DNA tracker starts acting up. He sees the message on the back of the tracker and screams, "Fairies do exist." We then see a scrapbook of Crocker going through his entire life, desperately searching for fairies. Tragic. His entire life passes him by as he spends it preoccupied with recapturing the magic from his youth. How sad. And Wanda ends the montage by saying, "Happy March 15th, which is kind of harsh." Cosmo says, "At least you gave him a swell lifelong hobby," as Crocker hones in on Timmy's house while searching for the fairies with the DNA tracker. And honestly, I'd call it more of an all-consuming obsession more so than a hobby, but pop off, Cosmo. But before anything can happen, the angry mob, now old as hell, chases Crocker away. And it's kind of dark that the majority of the people from the angry mob aren't present here. Sure, maybe they all moved on, but maybe, just maybe, they're all dead. Crocker then talks directly to the audience, stating that he knows fairies exist and that he will catch one. Cosmo then shoots him in the ass with a wand and he runs off. And honestly, this has got to be one of the darkest episodes of the entire Fairly OddParents series. Knowing his backstory actually makes it harder to view Crocker's freakouts in a comedic light. This episode is right up there with the one where Timmy wishes he was never born and sees how much happier everyone could have been without him. A lot of times on this show we can see that fairy godparents are like a substitute mom and dad. They're usually assigned to kids with absent or neglectful parents for that reason. And it's really upsetting and bleak to think that Cosmo and Wanda fulfilled the roles of parental figures to Crocker for years when he was a young vulnerable child, and then had no problem ditching him, abandoning him, leaving him far worse off than he ever was before he had fairies. Seriously, think about it. If Crocker never had fairies, his life probably would have turned out fine. Sure,
they didn't leave him, they were forced to leave him. They were forced to leave him because of the rules. They didn't leave him on purpose. They left him because of the rules. They couldn't go against the rules. I don't know where you getting this from, but you reaching out your ass on this one, sir.
his mom didn't have enough time for him, but he was naturally developing into a good kid with a promising future. He was on a great path. He was loved by his peers and adored by the entire community. He was saving goddamn lives. And then fairies happened. He was shown love and magic for the first time, only to have it brutally ripped away without warning, and he could never get over it. He goes on to spend the rest of his life obsessing over the forgotten pieces of his past, preventing him from living any kind of meaningful life in the present. Cosmo and Wanda enter a young boy's life and then exit it while burning everything down on their way out. And Jorgen, whose sole purpose is supposed to be assigning miserable kids fairies to make their problems better and improve their happiness, should be goddamn fired forever after this episode for the atrocities he has committed against Crocker. Strip him of his title, he had no issues ruining an innocent child's life and future when that is supposed to be be the exact opposite of his job. But enough of me yapping. What did you guys think of Secret Origin of Denzel Crocker? Do you find it funny or just depressing? And did it make you feel bad for the ugly menace of a man? Let me know how you're feeling in the comments, and let's kick it. And
It was a great origin story. That's what I will say. Great origin story episode for Crocker, most definitely. I wish they would have had an origin story episode for Vicky though. We never got one for Vicky. I feel like all the antagonists should have got episodes, origin story episodes, especially Vicky. Vicky is very interesting of a character that you could have made an origin story episode for if they did make one. I don't know if they ever did, but would have been nice to see. But anyways, so that's just gonna about do it for this one. I'll see you on the next video. Till then, peace out.